going to go ahead and take a look at organizing your two-way table, because one of the very important ways to be able to determine if two variables are independent is by organizing your data correctly. So the first key that we need to make sure that we are looking at is taking a look at what is the variable that seems to be the one that is explaining the response. So yesterday when we had talked about this problem about gender, okay, versus your Super Bowl activity of choice, okay, then we had discussed how gender is probably the one that is explaining that Super Bowl choice. So whichever one's the explaining one, that is where your arrows originate from. So I think of that is where I'm going to take my then arrows and go from male down to the denominator, female down to the denominator, and total down to the denominator, because this will then end up being my marginal, which is the totals. And remember here, which is dependent upon you being a male or a female, those are then your conditional probabilities. All right, so let's take a look at one of these, and we'll do one together just to see how you do. So here we have a situation where we are wondering if the driver type, whether that be student or staff, affects the type of car owned, which is American, European, or other. So we went out in the parking lot and we took some tally of some vehicles based on where they were located and who owned those. So are type of driver and type of car independent or not independent? Okay, first question. What seems to be the driving force? Would you say the type of driver would be explaining the car type, or would you say car type explains the type of driver? Well, I hope you can see that the type of driver is going to be the explanatory variable. So I'm going to draw my arrows down, away from that, across that column there. And then, of course, we'll have marginal over here with the totals. Okay? So what that's telling me is that in each one of these here, 195 is my denominator. Okay? So my American is 115 over 195, and that is 58.9%. It's actually, I think, like 99 or 97%. Okay, and then 24 over 195. Okay, so here I am. Let's see if I can write these better. 12.3%. Okay, and then my 55 divided by 195 is my 28.2%. And then, of course, 195 over 195. So that is the total proportion of males and the different types of vehicles that they drive. So out of all the 195 males, there's the proportion of those things. Now let's take so those are students. Now let's take a look at what we have for the staff. So, of course, our denominator is at 164. So for this top one of American car, I've got 97 out of 164. And that, if you divide that out, is 59.1%. Next is 21 over 164, and that's your 12.8%. And then we have the 47 over 164, which is 28.7%. Okay? And then, of course, there's our total, 164 over 164. So these are going to be 100% down here on the bottom. Now, I want you to also make sure the marginal is the key to determining these. So in the marginal, we've got, let's finish these out, we've got that 212 over the total of 359, 59.1%. and then 45 divided by 359. That's your 12.5%. And then the last one, 102 divided by 359 is your 28.8%. Now, and of course, then that makes for 100% of the data. So here is the key. I always want you to compare, always compare the conditional probabilities to the marginal. And so you are looking for the discrepancy if the difference is less than 1 percentage point, then you're going to consider that the same amount. Because with certain fractions, you just can't have the exact same amount. But if they are within 1 decimal of each other, then we are saying, okay, that is close enough to be considered the same. So let's take a look at some of these. Here I'm going to compare my 58.9 and my 59.1. I don't compare those to each other. I compare those to this marginal over here in the total column. And I can see that they are both within 1 percentage point of the total. So that tells me if the fact that you are student or staff does not change the rate at which you are choosing an American car. So I know at this point American car, at least, is going to be independent of type of driver. Now, what you're going to find is that you need to do all of these categories, because you could say have American car be independent, but European and other are not. So I want you to do them all for that reason. You could have even some subgroups that are independent while the others are not. Let's see what's happening here. 12.3 I'm going to compare to the 12.5, and 12.8 I'm comparing to the 12.5. So those are also close enough to be considered independent, and so on. And the last one is my 28.2%, and I'm comparing, oh, that didn't go over very well. And then I'm going to go ahead and be comparing that to the, and this 28.7%, and comparing it to the, both of those compared to the 28.8%. All right, so in summary, the fact that you are student or staff type of driver does not change the rate at which you own certain cars. So let me have us learn how to form a proper conclusion to make sure it includes everything we want to include. So here I say, are the type of driver and car type independent? And so I see all these things are the same. The rate has not changed. So I say, yes, they are independent. So you first need to answer the question. Okay, so type of driver and type of car are independent. Okay, we are answering the question first, are independent. Now we're going to add some fluff to it. So we're going to justify why that is independent. And we're always just going to think of our song. The fact that you are one thing does not change the rate. So the fact that you are student or staff does not change the rate at which you choose, does not change the rate at which you choose, let's see, at which we choose, American, European, or other cars. Or other type of car. Okay, now, normally I would like to put in some actual percentages and show those to you, but we have them listed there, so we're good. So we answer the question, and then we elaborate as to why it is independent. All right, so we're going to kind of just skim through doing one more of these questions. And so the one that I want to look at, let's just go on to the top of the next page. And so in this problem, we are wondering if the age category, whether you are under 30, 30 to 49, or over 50, I don't know where 50 went in there, okay, is that going to affect the type of blood pressure? All right, so the question is, what seems to be the explaining variable in this problem? Is the age explaining the type of blood pressure, or is the type of blood pressure explaining your age? And so I think you can understand that age is the explanatory variable here. That is the one that is driving this force. Now, down here we had gender as the driving force. So gender was located on top, the student, staff, and total. So we used gender, and we would go from that down, away from it. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to go from the explanatory variable across in this case. Okay? So they're all going to be going across, which means my denominators are going to be 98, 179, 197, and then the total. So here we go. Let's fill in this first one. Given, there are 27 out of the 98 total in the under 30 category that have low blood pressure, and that is your 27.6%. Okay, now medium is this 48 over your total. Okay, so your 48 over your total, and that is your 49%. Okay, and lastly, your high over the total of under 30-year-olds, and so that's your 23 over 98, and that is your 23.5%. Okay, and then of course we're totaling 100% here. So let's take a moment. I'm going to pause this recording for a second for us to fill in the other numbers and then examine those for independence. All right, so let's take a look at this problem. I did my fractions. So I want you to notice that because we went from left to right in the under 30 category, my denominator was this 98 every single time. Okay? And then I did the low, the medium, and the high. Okay? Then I've got the red section, which is the 30 to 49, and my denominator is going to be that 179 every single time, and I'll be going from left to right. So 37 over it, 91 over it, and 51 over it, and so on. And so then, of course, your last one here was 197 as the denominator going from left to right. Now, this is very important. Let's do this follow-up because this has got some very interesting information. Are age category and type of blood pressure independent? Now, overall, I'm going to say that age category and type of blood pressure are not independent. Because remember that you cannot say one depends on the other in this class. That implies a perfect functional relationship, and we do not have that per se. So age, category, and type of blood are not independent of each other, which, remember, that's your first statement. Then the second one is the fact that you are one thing does not change the rate. The fact that you are, under 30, 30 to 49, or the over 50, the fact that you are those things does not change the blood pressure so that's okay, so that's what it would be if I was doing this um, you know, for an independent one. Okay? But it is not independent. So therefore, I've got to fix this up here. Let's try that again. All right. So it does change the blood pressure type. So the fact that you are one thing does change the type of blood pressure. Now, if you have this one such as this, you have to support with your statistical evidence. So then my third thing I will say is, for example, okay, and here I can look at, and remember we're going to compare the conditional to the marginal. So I can see, to me I see, a big difference here, okay? The adults or whoever these are who are 50 plus, okay, have low blood pressure the least out of all grade categories. Okay, now give a specific example. 15.7%, okay, versus the marginal, which okay, hold on. 15.1% for that and 20% overall. Okay, so 20% overall or marginal. Okay, so in summary, if you're going to be taking care of this, make sure you know your arrows, answer your three statements, answer it, and then tell more, kind of go into the definition of the independent and why it is or is not that, and then give a specific example. All right, so you're going to do the rest of those things, which, by the way, I want you to notice something that is very interesting, and that is this section here of the medium blood pressure. So what if you looked at all of these, if you compared the conditional to the marginal, they are all within 1 percentage point. So technically, overall, the genders are not independent of the type of blood pressure, but medium is. Medium blood pressure is independent because the fact that you are in one of these age categories is not changing the rate at which you have high blood pressure. Okay? So very big key there. Now, let's jump over here to the second problem in your assignment that you're going to be doing, because I want to make sure that you are very, very careful on what the denominators are. So make sure you are watching denominators. Okay? So, for example, and I'm sorry this first one kind of split the the table. So what percent of all applicants were Asian? Of all applicants means of all the applicants. So out of the 1,755 who were applicants, what proportion of them were Asian? So then that's my 292. Okay? And then I'm going to put that into a percent. Okay? So you'll complete that. Let's take a look at the next two. Of course, this is your accepted, waitlisted, turned down, or turned away, and your gender. So I want you to take a moment and do numbers 2 or B and C, and let's see how you do on that. So I'll pause the video here and let you check those out. All right, so let's take a look at what we have here. B says what percent of the students accepted. So that means out of this section of 931 accepted patients, what proportion are Asian? And that's 110. Whatever that percent is, you can calculate that. Now, C sounds very similar. What percent of Asians? So that means my denominator is this 292. So what proportion of the Asians were accepted, which is that 110? Okay, so you're going to get very different numbers, and it's because you're taking out of a different sized pool. You would be taking out of 292 instead of the entire 1755. All right, and then here's this last one, what percent of all students? So yay, that's my total, 1755. What proportion of all those students were accepted? And so that's 931 out of that. And so then you'll go ahead and finish it out. And your assignment then, of course, is going to be to finish those what explains what, and then go through this assignment through page 18. All right, so good luck with that.